right, good. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Branden Miller. I've been in information security, I like to say, since 1991, even though it didn't exist at that point. But I was a naval cryptologist, so I had to learn all about physical security and secure communications for, at that time, long-haul communications on submarines and back to shore. But anyway, so give me the benefit of the doubt whenever I say I've been doing this since 1991. All right. Basically, in keeping with the theme of this year, of what keeps me up at night, it's a lack of security controls. So I've done a lot of work from reverse engineering, which is the only thing I hated in my career and I sucked at, to Linux administration, to governance, risk, and compliance. I was telling Adam, I've known him for probably 10, 12 years now. I haven't done anything sexy in a while. I just read policies, implement procedures, and do gap assessments, things of that nature. So I'm very comfortable in my early retirement. I get to start converting all my retirement accounts in 3 years, and I retire in 7. So I'm good. This is my sunset tour. If you have questions, just raise your hand, shout it out. I'm not one of those people that are like, I'll have a Q&A session at the end. I don't like Q&A sessions. I like to address issues, or if I say something wrong, just throw it out there, all right? So basically, this is what we're going to cover. Yes? Most people in this career field. But yeah, I absolutely, give me a well-written policy and I'm happy. Give me a crappy policy and I'm even happier, because then I can help fix it. The funny thing is, I suck at writing. So to generate or draft a policy from scratch is the bane of my existence. But I love critiquing other people's work and making their work better. So, good question. Thank you. And it's been a while since I've seen you. We're going to talk about CIS controls. Basically, what are they, why they matter, do a general overview of CIS controls, and then how to implement them, and little, bottom line up front. They're a lot easier to implement than a lot of the other frameworks you've heard about, NIST, ISO, things of that nature. The reason is they're very prescriptive and they're pointed. They don't claim to get you secure. They claim to get you 75 to 80% secure within the first year. I think that's reasonable. So as I'm talking about these controls and things of that nature, keep an idea of the growing cybersecurity threats. I threw 3 of them up here: ransomware, phishing, supply chain issues. Kind of think in your head how what I'm talking about will apply to those. We're going to talk about why frameworks matter. Most importantly, the difference between a framework and a set of controls. A framework is a high-level procedural or management procedure that gives you an idea, right? And then you have security controls that are the implementation phase. So one's strategic, the other one is tactical. And then we'll talk about a little bit about standardized security baselines. Basically, those baselines are those set of actionable controls. And in this case, we're talking CIS. A couple of years ago, I did a big thing on NIST and how to automate some of those security controls within NIST using predefined GPOs and STIGs and things like that. This is basically a similar talk, just with CIS, which is a little bit easier for especially medium and small businesses. I have a friend, he's got 50 employees, runs an HR business. They have no IT staff. It's all outsourced. So my question to him was, hey, that's great. That's a management decision. But who reads the contract language between you and your outsourced staff? And his eyes kind of got big and he thought about it for a second. So now I read this. All right. So how CIS, critical security controls, got implemented. Have you ever heard of SANS? They do a lot of training courses, right? They also do a lot of engineering, especially in the old days. But they came up with, years ago, it was like SANS Top 8. And it was literally the top 8 hacks that they see that could, if you mitigated, could secure your business, right? Once again, not 100%. Their goal was never, this fallacy of 100% secure. It was always, let's do better. Then they came out with like the top 15, top 18, top 20. That's whenever it became really popular, SANS Top 20. Well, it became so popular, it came unwieldy for them. That was not their core business practice, was securing the world, right? It was securing their clients. So they turned it over to the Center for Internet Security. Not to be confused with CISA, Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. That's a government arm. CIS is a public-private venture, so keep that in mind. So now it's maintained by the CIS. They started with 18 controls. It used to be called the top 18 or something like that. I'm sorry, top 20, because it was just a lift and shift from SANS over to their organization. And now they've actually combined a couple, so they went back to 18. So a lot of people refer to it as the 18 critical controls. All right. Once again, they had 20 for a little while. This was their top 5 attacks. And what they are saying is literally, if you can implement their foundational controls, you will be 77, 78, 86, 83% able to block those attacks. So once again, not 100%, because they realize that the attack vectors are changing constantly. But what they're saying is, if you can apply these security principles, then at least you're better off than the next guy. And if you know anything about hackers, they're pretty lazy at times. So if they have if they don't, like if they pick you just out of a group of people randomly, and they start attacking you and they can't get in, they're going to move on to the next guy. It's only if they're doing a specific attack against you for a specific reason that they tend to actually stay there and continuously hit you. They're looking to make money. And if they don't make money by continuously attacking a company that seems to be pretty good at defense. If you employ all the safeguards, the CIS safeguards, then they're saying they'll get you up into the 90% effective. There is an entire class on how they come up with these percentages. So basically it's the data dumps from SANS that they've had over the years, and then their own research with their clients. So, any questions so far? All right. The big key takeaway here is they are addressing key real-world threats. So they don't deal with theoretical. They deal with a client of ours got hacked. They were remediated, provided us the data. Here's the changes that we made in security controls. That's a lot different than a lot of other frameworks like NIST, where their idea is you apply everything. You have this nice little paperweight, you back up a little bit so that your computer can get back on the network, and then you're secure. So they're saying that's a horrible approach. It's not effective, it's not efficient. Everyone's going to get hacked eventually. If you haven't already been, you may just not know about it. So that's their approach. Yes, absolutely. So MITRE attack, or MITRE, is actually one of their feeds into CIS. So they're receiving all that MITRE data. What they're doing, how many people are familiar with MITRE? And yeah, okay. If you look at MITRE, I think, oh my God, I've been doing this for over 30 years and I am so confused. What they do is they just take that data and they apply it to their set to make it a little bit better. They understand that very few people can pick up the whole MITRE framework and apply it. So they kind of dumb it down, not kind of, they dumb it down significantly. And they just say, All these different things, here's your one control. Apply it, which is really nice. They broke it up, so there's 153 safeguards is what they call them. I call them security controls. They've broken them up into 3 different sections. So if you're a small or medium business, or even a large enterprise that doesn't have a good security program, I recommend starting with this, because like I said, they dumb it down so that you can start to play catch up in your maturity and then move to a different framework. But the first group has 56, and these are literally things like asset management. If you don't know what you own, you can't protect it. Software management. If you don't know what you own, you can't protect it. So it's these simple foundational ideas in information security that they're actually helping you apply. IG2 is the intermediate level. Realistically, if you've had a security team or even a security person for a couple of years, you probably do a little bit of each of these levels. Level 3 is advanced. That's things like red teaming, pen testing, defense, things of that nature. You may not have done those, or you may have paid for them, but a lot of times smaller and medium businesses will buy a pen test not knowing what a pen test is. Somebody just recommends it, so they go buy it. Well, this explains why you need it and why you shouldn't do it today. You might need to do it next year or the year after, which is really nice. That'll save you a lot of money. The first 6 foundational controls, once again, inventory of assets, inventory of software, data protection. What data are you trying to protect? A lot of people don't understand that you don't need to protect all of your data. If you have classification guidance and you have public data, why are you encrypting that and spending that money? Usually the answer is, hard drive space is cheap. Well, I remember times where it wasn't cheap because a factory burned down in Taiwan, right? So you don't have to protect and encrypt everything. Let's identify what your data is so we can start protecting that. Secure configurations, things like using GPOs. You'd be surprised how many mature IT organizations don't use GPOs. And I say air quotes and mature because if you're building a new system by hand every time, I'm going to say you're not mature. You may be really efficient at what you're doing, but you can be more efficient and more mature by using GPOs. Downloading and just spinning up virtual machines, things of that nature. Account management, right? I've been with several organizations where I was 3 years removed from that organization, still had access to training systems, so that's one of the positives, but still had access to systems 3 years later. So account management's very significant. And then access control management. One of the first arguments I had whenever I left the military and went to work in the real world is I worked in an academic organization, and their mantra was kind of, our data is the people's data, right? We work for the state of Kentucky. We don't own this. The citizens of Kentucky own this. No, I'm sorry. That's a hard stop. Once again, you haven't identified your data, so how do you know what you need to protect or don't? I agree that some of it maybe doesn't need to be protected. You're a public institution. But to just say, we're not going to enforce certain security controls because we want everyone to have access to our data, I don't buy that. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, no, it's good. Yes. Yeah, so one of the things that I'll talk about here, it's actually number 14, is service provider management. They specifically call this out where other frameworks don't really call it out. And it's because of that reason. Whenever you start automating or relying on someone else, especially external to your organization, you have to understand fully what it is they're responsible for. So not only what they're responsible for, what they're accountable for. Because there's a difference between responsibility and accountability. So yeah, the idea of access management, access controls, that does have to shift up because you're relying on someone else to do it for you. In the case of my friend, they use a cloud-based ERP program, and I said one of my first questions was, who's responsible in the event of a breach? And his response was, I don't remember the word breach in my contract. So that's where we started, right? Good question. Controls 7 through 14, so these are those intermediate controls, or I'm sorry, the organizational controls. It's going to be things like vulnerability management, audit log management, email and browser protections. In the future, because they took this from SANS, and SANS's focus was a lot of software, they kept this separate. But email and browser protections and future iterations of CIS are going to be part of software management. Malware defense, data recovery, network and infrastructure management, security awareness, and then service provider management. And then the last one, like I said, these are those truly advanced controls that if you don't have those first two sets of controls, you're going to absolutely fail in this third set. And I don't even recommend getting a pen test if you don't have account management, right? If you don't have access management. I've seen as a consultant a 200-page document of these basic security controls saying, hey, why don't you just go out and grab this CIS document and start implementing that and call us in 3 years. Now, I thought that was a pretty good thing from that pen testing company, because a lot of them out there would have just kept taking their money every year and given them that same 200-page report of everything bad that they've done. But they've actually said, hey, go do these steps, then call us back, which I thought was pretty cool. Any other questions so far? All right. I'm going to put my phone up here. I forgot to have my timer. I usually have like this old school timer. Egg timer is what it is, but you know. So where to start? Number one, perform a gap assessment. And what I always tell people is, look, you don't have to have this full-on gap assessment. If you look at NIST has a whole document on how to do a gap assessment. And I think it's like 327 pages. Not as many pictures as some of their other documents either. So I always caution people, don't try to do that gap assessment. Just start off with those first controls. Do I have an asset list? Do I have a software asset list? Things of that nature. Focus on quick wins, asset inventory. It's hard, it's arduous, but if you can get that in place, everything else starts to fall in place. Right? I see your face over there. You've probably been through that same nightmare of accounting for everything. Yeah, it sucks and it's hard. And I say quick win, it's really probably going to take you months. But once you get that in place, everything else can start to fall in. Patching. You'd be surprised how many people don't patch. I was with a company that would patch every month. Unless there were critical patches, then they would patch within 24 to 48 hours of a critical patch coming out. But they didn't require their users to reboot. So they would have 30, 60, 90 days of patches, but no reboot, so those patches could be applied. Still blows my mind. And then multi-factor authentication, if you can afford it. There are some cheaper options. I'm not saying go out and do like Duo or something like that. just get some type of MFA in place. Once again, if you can just stop that script kiddie from gaining access within the first few days of attempting to access your systems, that might be enough, right? Let's play the odds here. And then you can start to think about, don't actually integrate, but think about how you can integrate into other required frameworks. If you're government, you shall do NIST 853. There is no option because there's a federal law called FSMA. And if you have to send a report every year that says how compliant you are with FSMA. And if you're not compliant, it can be held against you. ISO 27001, if you are an international organization, and a lot of times you see the manufacturing, they'll have like 9001. 27001 is the IT security portion of the ISO controls. There are some requirements, especially in the EU, that you be compliant. Or if you're doing business with the EU, that you shall be compliant. So just get an idea of how CIS integrates into those frameworks. I'll show you a tool here shortly. I'm going to skip that because I'm going to do a demo. Basically, tools and resources, this is all part of the free. You just sign up, give them your email address, and you get access to these tools. So the first one is they have a self-assessment tool. And what this does is it actually walks you through each of their security controls. It tells you how to ask the question, how to answer the question. So it's really, really nice. And then it scores you if you've enrolled, like if you just ask for access, then you may not necessarily get the data as you compare to other people in industry. You have to do a couple of more steps, and then what they'll do is they'll judge you based on other small businesses that do this vertical, which is really nice because then you can start to understand, it's kind of that analogy of you don't have to be able to outrun the bear, you have to be able to outrun the other hiker you're with. Same thing for security, right? You don't necessarily have to be fully secure. You just need to be better secure than your partners or the same people in the same space as you, because hopefully they'll bypass you and go to them. So the CSAT tool, there's a free version. I actually prefer the free version because it gets a little more granular when you're scoring yourself. And then there's a pro version that you pay for. But if you pay for the pro version of any one tool, you get access to all the other tools. And because they are a nonprofit organization, it's literally like, it's fairly cheap. It's fairly cheap. I work for the government. We have the pro version. And I think for government, it was actually free. So if you're on their website, they'll tell you if you're federal, state, local government, or tribal, then it's free. All you got to do is call them and ask. All right, the second thing is their benchmarks and hardened images. So a benchmark, is anybody familiar with STIGs? Yeah, okay. So I worked on STIGs for years. I'm one of those weird people that liked it. And that's because we did them manually and we weren't enterprise, and we had some special systems. So that made it cool. So my job was not to check boxes. My job was to uncheck boxes, but still have that box secure, which is really neat. But anyway, so their benchmarks are basically GPOs that you can apply in your environment that automatically do this for you. And the way their website is laid out is it says like level 1, so that's their basic controls. Level 2 is advanced controls. Level 1 doesn't, I've never come across a system that a level 1 GPO is broken from CIS, which is nice. That also means that it's pretty wide open, right? And that's why it doesn't break anything. Level 2, that's when it starts to break things, communications with other systems. You have to start paying attention to ports and firewalls and things of that nature. And then their level 3, they now call STIG. So they've taken the CISA STIG requirements and created a GPO that satisfies that STIG. So I always say the third category there was to know your data. You should not be applying STIG level 3 GPOs if you have no idea what data you own. You shouldn't be applying STIG level 2, or sorry, level 2 controls or GPOs. Go for those level 1 ones. And the reason is you're going to overcomplicate your network immediately. As soon as that refresh GPO hits your environment, things are going to start shutting down. I can guarantee it if you do the STIG level controls. And then the hardened images. So they have hardened images that reside within AWS, Azure, GCP, and Oracle. So if you're like, hey, I'm in those environments already, I don't know how to do VM, you can just go out there and shop in those marketplaces. And CIS uploads those every time they have a change, which is really nice. They're free unless there's a licensing requirement. Like Microsoft loves to charge everyone, right? But they have things like Accord Linux. Never heard of Accord Linux, but they have a free VM up there you can download and begin. And then the other one, they do the mapping for other frameworks for you, which is really nice. So the example I always give is if you are going after a government contract, you have to have CMMC, NIST 800-171 alpha, right? You have to be certified. I guarantee you, if you took your business and had a certification audit, you're going to fail if you've never taken a serious approach to CMMC, right? It's not going to happen. The same thing for NIST 853. I think it's NIST 880 is for healthcare. The healthcare had such a problem with implementing NIST controls, they came out with their own NIST guidance saying, here's what you need to do to satisfy HIPAA, which is really nice. Whenever I worked for healthcare, I loved that. But it still only brought it down from 350 controls to like 270. So that's still a lot of work, right? Once again, CIS level 1 is 56 controls. Focus on those 56. Go to level 2. Focus on those extra 50 something, I can't remember. And then I think it's 27 for level 3. Then you will be really prepared to jump into the NIST world or the ISO world, where it's a lot more nebulous. I have a friend that's a CMMC auditor, and he said that he gets anxiety every time he goes to a new client because there are a lot of things that they've come to an agreement with on how they're going to score, but there's no guidance for that score from the federal government. So they're like, I'm writing my name on this certificate, on this, audit result, and I don't have the full picture. CIS gives you that full picture for their things. Each control has a document, a statement that says, once again, how to ask the question, how to answer the question. It's really nice. Yes, ma'am. 100%. So the statement was, NIST, they don't give you necessarily those implementation standards. Does CIS? Yes. CIS, the reason why I like to start with it, it's prescriptive. Whenever it says, apply this control, it actually means apply this control. There's no black or white. It is, you go click that box. There are some that are a little nebulous, like they don't tell you how to do asset management, but they do give you guidelines, which is nice. STIGs do give you guidance. Yes, absolutely. So the whole purpose of the STIG is to set those tactical implementation controls so that you can then satisfy a NIST requirement. The problem is they don't necessarily map a STIG item or control with what you're actually accomplishing under NIST. Some do. That's how you know if they've been around for a while or if they're new, because they'll have that mapping, that direct mapping, but they don't always. All right, any questions about the tools and resources? Yeah. Oh, that is nice and difficult. Awesome. Yeah. Awesome. So now I can skip the slide where I talk about implementation and the keys, because we just got a good example of it. But yeah, I appreciate that. Sometimes I think whenever I'm presenting, I'm like, are they getting it? And I'm glad to hear feedback from the audience, because that just helps me understand that, okay, I'm talking the talk, I'm walking the walk, and I have other people that provide feedback. Thanks. One of the things I forgot to do, I'm going to go to the website and just show you the website real quick. You still got that? Yep, good. So basically, their website's actually pretty easy. Right here at the top, because it's very significant and they're wanting people within cloud environments to understand, they provide this resource. If you click on CIS hardening images, they give you a list, and you can go through based off of what marketplace you use or what cloud provider you use. I keep saying marketplace. What they will provide you. So let's see, Windows. Almost everybody uses Windows, so let's go look at server. Microsoft Windows Server. So right here they'll tell you, and you can even hover over the bubble, and it says it's base recommendations. Their intent is to not break your stuff, right? But they want you to start thinking about security and then get to the point where you can do the level 2 controls. But the cool thing is they've identified those level 1 controls, and all you have to do, if I click launch, it would just take me to AWS, but you log into like your Azure tenant, and you go to the marketplace for Azure tenant, and you download that virtual machine. And right out of the gate, you're level 1 compliant, which is really nice. Level 2, this is once again where it gets a little bit stricter, and they tell you, it's kind of hard to see here, but they tell you that this is for environments where security is paramount, and this may have an adverse effect. I will say it will have an adverse effect. If you're starting your journey and you go straight level 2, you're going to have some problems. And like I said, that's because you have to understand what ports and protocols you're using. You have to use firewalls now, not just the Windows firewall that's out of the box any. They're actually wanting you to use statements, things of that nature. And then your STIG level is going to be fully DoD compliant. They just pull those over from CISA, which is nice. Another good part is whenever you slide down here, you have benchmarks. So those are their actual GPOs where you can go pull that GPO down and throw it in your test environment. Please throw it in your test environment. Don't take my word as level 1 won't break anything as like gospel. I don't know your environment. I'm just saying all the environments that I've assisted in, they haven't broken anything. Let's see. So yeah, these are going to be your benchmarks. The CIS controls, that's going to show you that guidance. So control by control, they're going to tell you, once again, what question to ask, how to score it, and then how to implement it. And then the beauty of it is it will tell you, if you've done this, you can now think about level 2, right? For a control by control step, which is really nice. The Secure Suite, that's a paid for service, and the MS ISAC, that's a paid for service. It's kind of like their, the Secure Suite is a full suite of automated control, testing, compliance. If you're running a vulnerability scanner, which I hope you all are, at least getting scans, you'll see CIS controls as one of the actual things you can select to scan for, which is nice. Any questions about the website? All right, it's really, I hate to say self-explanatory, but it is self-explanatory. All right. So some common pitfalls. Anybody play Pitfall, Harry? Whenever you were little? Yeah. As soon as I came up with the word pitfall, that's the image that came into my head. So now you get that. Don't skip those foundational steps. I won't say it's an exercise in futility if you don't have 100% tracking of your assets, your hardware and your software, but it does make things hard. And you can start doing implementation of level 2 and level 3 controls, and it just won't work. So if you don't know what your assets are, you're going to get just hammered on a pen test. If you don't know what your assets are, your blue teaming is not going to be effective. So keep that in mind. Incomplete asset inventory, I've kind of just bashed that dead horse. Poor documentation. So it's funny, in the NIST world, you have to have something called an SSP, System Security Plan. Sounds pretty innocuous. It's several hundred pages. One of the systems I worked for as a contractor in the federal government had 15 pages of just ports and protocols. So because it's at that level, you have to know what you're using. And if you're not using it, you have to shut that port down, right? So it's very specific. For CIS, they're looking for, do you have a network diagram? Do you keep it up to date? How often? They're not saying, shoot for the moon, you might hit the stars. No, that's a stupid statement, because who wants to die from deprivation of oxygen while you're chasing after that star, right? They're saying, let's take a step forward, which is what I really like about it. And then lack of continuous monitoring. So even people that are successful implementing CIS controls, if you don't continuously monitor your environment, that's all going to fall down. It's a house of cards. All frameworks, all security baselines, they're a house of cards, right? So you have to keep up with it. Yes, ma'am. Yeah. Correct. So the statement was that they don't necessarily account for good change management program. They have a couple of white papers on it, right? They don't tell you what does a good change management program look like. So you will have to go to outside sources for some of this information. Good point. Good point. As a matter of fact, I don't think they mention like a change control board anywhere that I've seen so far. I've been doing this for. Yes. Yeah, they just don't say how. Right. Right. Correct. Correct. Good point. Some lessons from the field. There's my real world examples. Thank you for bringing up your real world example. If you didn't get that because there was no microphone, then you should have been here. I'll see you at SecureWV 2026. But basically, this is where I have to be cautious, because last time I was a consultant for several years and I have a hard time not mentioning names. So I'm going to slow down. I like to speak fast, and I'm going to choose my words. So I was helping a state agency one time, and they were their state had just come out with its own cybersecurity law, right? So the state agency was asking, there's like 80 controls. That's a little difficult for us to apply. And my response was, that's because your state hasn't put out guidance yet. They just have the names of the controls, and that's about it. Why don't we pull from another state, Texas Cyber? They have a law, and they have a pretty good document. So what we can do is we can map what your state is requiring, what they require, and lacking that guidance, let's at least do something. So whenever we tried to apply those, it was a little bit much for them. So I said, okay, let's take a step back. Let's try CIS Implementation Group 1. I would say 40% of it is just policies. So before you can start to secure your environment, you have to say what you want to do. You have to say that security is important. So that way you can start to change culture, and other people can understand this. So we did policy, procedure. That's what we focused on. And what we learned was, just by doing that, we started ticking off those requirements from the state. Once they implemented the IG1, those 56 controls, they were about 40 to 50% of meeting those state requirements. So then we were able to do phase 2, or IG2, Implementation Group 2. That got them to about 70%. And then all we really had to focus our efforts on was that last 30%, that last mile, right? So it was really nice. And because it's prescriptive, you're not always having to ask, why am I doing this? It tells you why you're doing it. It says, do this, here's why. It's really nice. The importance of measurement and consistency. A lot of people don't understand metrics. I mean, they're hard sometimes, right? But and what people want to see is, if I'm spending all this energy and effort and applying security controls, like, how do I prove that I'm doing something good? And a lot of times they're trying to prove a negative, meaning, I haven't been breached yet. I do all this work and I haven't been breached. I've made no headway. No, that's not it. Let's measure the effect. If you can't measure the effectiveness, let's at least measure what you've done to get there, right? So that way you can then start to show, hey, our competitor got hacked this way. We have that security control in place. We might have. And that's okay. A lot of boards want to see a picture, not, I implemented 56 security controls and, here's how we did that. They don't give a crap about that. What they care about is, our competitor got hacked. Here's what we have in place that could stop that. That's a picture. So I always say, start off with anecdotal evidence and what is it called? I just dropped it right now. You have it's like touchy-feely statistics, and then you have hard statistics. The touchy-feely, what's that? Yeah, there you go. Objective, subjective, right? Subjective is, I don't know. Let's build a story. Objective is, we've got a little bit of data now we can put behind that. But any questions? I don't have any specific things to track, but if you contact me, I can give you some things that over my years of consulting, I've helped people track. Yes, ma'am. Yeah. Right. Oh, yeah. Good point. And that just reminded me of something else. So, one of the things that is fairly useless in information security is a SOC 2 type 1. So, you define what it is you want measured. You pay an auditor to come in and measure that. If you fail, it's because you're an idiot, because you've told them what you want them to measure, right? And then SOC 2 Type 2 is measurement over time. Well, that Type 1 is really, it's a point in time, on this date, here's what we found based on what they wanted us to find. But here's the important thing. Not everyone has a SOC 2 Type 1 report. If you have one, that's now marketing. So you can get new business. So information security is no longer a cost center, it's a profit center. Can be, right? So partner with marketing. And then you get up to SOC 2 Type 2, which is a little bit more involved. You don't define, right? And it's over time. It's saying they didn't just do this to get a report. They're doing this as daily business. That's the idea. We can debate that as well. Then your marketing gets better. SOC 2 Type 2. You'll debate. Okay. All right. But yeah, so there are a lot of things that you can do. Assessments, blue team, red team, any of that can show that picture and give you a little bit more finite data, I guess you could say. Emerging trends, I just kind of threw this in mostly because whenever I was looking for that other picture of Pitfall Harry, I came across this and I was like, war games, I got to throw that in there somehow. Things that CIS are trying to address for the future, not trying, they are addressing, are cloud technologies. I showed you those virtual machines that you can just go download in the individual marketplaces. That's something that they're heavily investing not only in the machines themselves, but how to do things like how to track your data within the cloud environment, how to track your assets within the cloud environment, which is really nice. Mobile, man, I try not to harp on mobile too much because in the past I've harped on it so much. But if you don't integrate, especially bring your own device, BYOD, into your work environment, then all of these security controls go out the window. So think of that as at least a portion of that your employee's device you own. That's what I always recommend, if not the whole thing. If you can't provide a company asset, then you're really opening yourself up to, you can open yourself up to a lot of issues. But CIS is actually starting to delve into the BYOD concept, which is cool. And then IoT, same thing. Things like shadow IT, stuff like that. That's a real problem, and it can really undo a lot of your security controls. Right? Yes, ma'am. Yeah. Yeah. A lot of other frameworks, their response is don't do it. Right. Know what you have. Know how it's used. Know what access it has. Things of that nature. Know where your data is. So yeah, I've worked for a company in insurance, and I could use my own device, but I had a sandbox on there. And so if I was doing work, I was on a sandbox. And I knew that every so often, there's a time frame, they would wipe out that sandbox and stand up a new one. Now, I never knew that as an operator, somebody that was using the device, but because I was in IT security, we were responsible, our branch was responsible for wiping those out and standing up new ones. So it was pretty nice. So all that to say, I could at least view documents that I had to work on in my phone, even though I couldn't actually do the work on the phone. I could view it, which was nice. Integration with AI-driven defense. So if you have the paid-for SOC service from CIS, they actually go into a lot of detail of what they use AI for and what they don't use it for. So if you're a small, medium business, they're fairly cheap. They do a really good job, and they communicate. They communicate. It's really nice. And it's not just we found this bad thing. It's we're noticing you're not using this service. Let's set a 30-minute time frame. We'll talk to you about that service. Right? You're already paying for it. Why aren't you using it? Kind of thing, which is really control. And then really cool. Continuous evolution of controls. Basically, they take an iterative approach like every other framework. What is nice is they'll usually come out with a version control. So from version 7 to version 8, and then if they have a .1, which they have right now, it's usually, hey, we misspelled this word. It's very few times they introduce a new concept, a security concept, with the updates, which is really nice. I worked in the payment card industry for a while, and when they would go from one control to the next, they would completely redo their framework, and then sometimes with the .1, they would get rid of entire sections. And I'm like, holy crap, I've just been doing this for 6 months, now you got rid of that, right? You just released it last year, this is your first update, and things are gone, and by the way, they've been replaced with something else. So CIS has a pretty good track record of major control releases, I think every 3 years, something like that. Minor ones annually. Key takeaways, I couldn't find a graphic that talked about practical, prioritize, and proven. So you get what you get and you don't throw a fit. But just understand that CIS controls are practical. They're not trying to save your organization, they're trying to make it better. They're trying to make it so that that hacker will move on to the next organization, right? Prioritized. They tell you, based on data, proven statistics, what to implement first, second, and third, which is really nice. And then, I haven't seen the white paper on their website, but I've spoken to we had a conference, a national conference this year, and people from CIS were there talking about future-proofing and what they're doing for the future. And one of the things that they had said was that they, I just forgot where I was going there. All right, proven. So yes, they do have the data to back it up. If I remember that, I'll let y'all know where I was going with that. What was the change? Oh, they're putting out a new white paper that will hopefully help people identify, like within implementation group 1, what they should attack first, second, and third, and then within group 2, within group 3. Because right now it's just kind of like, here's group 1, go forth and do it all, right? So they've had a lot of feedback as to, okay, within this group, what's the most important? Where do I start? Start small, measure progress, build culture. If you can get a culture that thinks about security, it makes your implementation a lot easier. So I'll just say don't necessarily do it in that order. It depends on your organization, which one of those you would do first, second, third. Typically, I would measure progress at the end. I would start with culture, but yeah. So what can you do? Go out, explore the resources on their website. Most of it is free and available just by using an email. I will say that if you do use one of the paid services or you're with a government organization and you get access, their version of multi-factor authentication is painstakingly slow. I've actually had, it's email based, And I've actually had the emails come in like 5 minutes after the token timed out. So just go into it knowing it can be slow sometimes. Join security communities and try to apply these principles in your organization, even if you have to do it surreptitiously. Make one little iterative change. If they say no to the CIS baselines, just implement at your next turn or change one thing. All right. Any other questions? Cool. Yes. One more. One more.
Okay, so you said you selected provided the second level of control, but for Owen, I think it's about number 14.
Number 14. That'll be right about, not there, but there. Yeah, number 14, service provider management.
Yeah, service provider. So talk to me about service provider management and be a first.
Okay, so service provider management, I think it's actually having a list of service providers is the only thing you have to have for control group 1. 2 and 3, they get a little bit more advanced. But for implementation group 1, they want you to have a list of your service providers. And that list needs to be categorized by the type of data that they're managing. If you have a classification of that data, you need to have that on there. Anytime that basically your service level agreement information, like how to contact them. And then one of the most important ones is who is your internal POC. A lot of people will put down a list of service providers and they'll have the phone number to call, right? But they never say who calls that number. So that's really important. You should always have an internal employee that is responsible for calling them. But yeah, the benefit, if I had the actual control up, it has, I think, 7 data points that you should be capturing within your service provider list. The other thing that I always caution people about is don't think of this as just service providers as in like my IT help desk, if that's external, my power, space, and cooling. People will always put down those building contacts. Also include things like breach notification information. Law enforcement is a service provider in that instance, so make sure you add them. I had a unit that I worked with out of Michigan. They had their partner units down there because if they needed to work, like if their building catches fire, but they want to continue operations, they can move over to another building. So they had those people's information in there. So it's. Did I answer your question? Okay. Yeah, but I don't remember like all 7 of them. I think there's 7. But yeah, if you go into that website, go down to the controls, it'll show you. You can print out a PDF. It'll show you exactly what they're looking for in that to satisfy that requirement. Anyone else? What did I? Oh, I got the numbers mixed up with the things. So it's actually 14 is security awareness training. That doesn't seem right. 15. Okay, I messed up my number. Yeah. No. Okay. All right, any other questions? It is lunch. So thank you for sticking around, especially with the mix-up and the... I couldn't come yesterday. I started a new job on Monday, and my boss is like, whoa, we have so many questions. You're speaking at a conference? And I was like, well, usually I don't talk about who I work with. And he's like, we got some other questions. So, yeah, switched it to Saturday because I needed that extra day for them to decide if I could even come here or not. So, all right, well, thank you very much. Go to lunch.